Reality 2023. This is a fascinating yet absolutely chilling drama based on a real life story. So it's a docudrama as such. Um, it stars Sydney Sweeney as a character called Reality Winner. And I'm not sure if that's the actual name of the woman in the story that this is actually based on, but Sydney plays Reality, and she's driving home from work when she's apprehended by FBI agents. And first moment, she doesn't even realize that. But of course, this is why, given things got even worse in the last couple of years, given the state of the world right now, the situation, especially in the USA, but even in the UK, and what might be around the corner if certain parties get even more of a foothold and who knows the next election. That's the worst worry. Um, but given it's already happened in the USA and given everything that is already happening in the UK as well, and in many other countries around the world, um, it just feels really daunting. Um, so, um, we don't really know, Reality Winner. She's just come home, I think, from, she's been out driving, maybe the supermarket or something. I don't think she's come from work. Um, but we don't know if she's done anything wrong. We just know that this is her just on her way home. Was a knock at the window on her car. She went down, and these FBI agents identify themselves. There's Josh Hamilton playing Agent Garrick. There's Marchant Davis playing Agent Taylor, main characters. There's other ones as well. There's people come all around her house with all their vans, their vehicles, um, their equipment that is for a full-on raid. They're going to search her house, and she she gets asked lots and lots of questions, and it gets more intense and more claustrophobic. It starts off very politely, and then there's more than a strong hint of menace that builds because they believe that she's withholding information, that she's not telling the whole truth. And you can see her getting more and more uncomfortable. And um, yeah, the intensity, the claustrophobia, the thought that this is it. This is like either she's innocent or she's guilty, or maybe somewhere in between, as in maybe she made a mistake or something. Is who knows? I mean, the thing is, if you've worked for any large organization, probably even to some extent smaller organizations, but certainly big places, the NHS, local authorities, central government. I'm, of course, thinking of the UK because that's where I am, but wherever you are in the world, if you work for organizations, you have to do with lots of rules, lots of laws. You have to comply. And I've seen UK versions of this, but I mean, drama is similar to this in certain respects, but slightly different. I mean, there was Official Secrets. Can't remember what year, but that was set in GCHQ, which is Cheltenham. It's spine headquarters as such. I mean, it's like the main secret um, services in the UK as such. And someone has I don't know if it's revealed there or not, so I won't talk about much about that. But again, someone is questioned for uh, possible breaches, and any sort of any sort of data breach is taken seriously. But I can imagine if you've got high clearance, if it's a matter of national security, well, it's going to be 10 times more serious than if it's sort of, I mean, it's bad enough if someone breaches any rules on personal data. If you put a name down wrong on forms, anything, I mean, uh, I can say that as say my local authority, and I won't say which local authority, might not be where I live now, but over many years I've had community charge and all those sort of things over decades, and the rules have been tightened up in more recent years because there's a lot more data online. But say 20, 30 years ago, there were, I think, there have been at times, I've seen mistakes done in the early days of email, and even more recently on email, um, where an organisation's contacted me and they've actually either put my details in the heading, like my name, my address, my not yeah, my address, stuff like that, in the heading of the email, and then they've made a mistake with my email address and sent it to someone else. And I know that that has happened because I know similar email addresses to my name, and someone actually forwarded emails that were for me that were sent to someone with a similar name. And that absolutely is really scary because what if that person um, had this information of mine, had nefarious aims, wanted to commit identity fraud, all those sort of things. So it's really serious for all of us. We've got to be, everyone's got to be careful with personal data. It really matters. You certainly don't, people who accidentally put in the wrong information into an email and send it to someone else, that is a serious data breach. And that's personal data. That is pretty important. It must go up a whole uh, a factor. I was going to say a factor of 10, probably a factor of 100 if it's national security. Case in point, most recently is this uh, tragedy with the Afghan data leak, with the stuff that happened in the US, with the UK, with the evacuation. There was a US and UK evacuation of personnel in 2021 from Afghanistan when just before the Taliban took over the country, when the US and UK and all the other countries in the Allies um, stepped down and removed themselves after the occupation from 2001. When that went wrong because someone leaked a lot of data out, and this has only come out in the last couple of weeks, it made a lot of news. I've listened to a bit of Lewis Goodall being interviewed by James O'Brien, also on his own show, talking about the injunctions and super injunctions, all that sort of really scary stuff where stuff wasn't even they weren't even allowed to, as journalists, they weren't even allowed to talk about it for best part of 2 years, 21 months or something. So there's lots of really potentially disturbing things that happen. And if you end up on the wrong side, for whatever reason, if your data is leaks, or if you are one of the staff who accidentally leaks information, there is, it's going to be serious. I've seen not just in this film, I've seen that, as I said, in Official Secrets and other films. It is like really serious. Um, and so the same applies to journalists. I mean, someone who finds out about a super injunction knows not to talk about it. They can't talk about it. It's for fear of 2 years in jail or something. And it's just like I I wouldn't like to be a journalist at risk of that. I mean, it's bad enough the thought that, if you accidentally make a mistake on one day and send an email to the wrong person, then that could be um, have huge consequences. So um, that's the situation, more or less, what reality is in, and it's serious because she's in the armed forces or something, or I think it's the NSA, National Security Agency, or something, US equivalent of um, the places in the UK that I've mentioned, like GCHQ and MI6 and MI5 and all that. Um, and she's in a lot of trouble anyway. I mean, she's either going to prove herself innocent or not, or who knows? This sort of, but it's the whole whether she does or not. It's not the be all and end all, because if she's innocent or guilty, it's still a really scary process. I mean, perhaps it is more scary if you're innocent, if you're just like going about your ordinary day's business, and then suddenly come back from the supermarket and uh, there's a whole pile of men who want to search all your personal belongings to look for clues because of a data breach. And it's like um, really frightening, really. Um, this really shows how it is. I'm pretty sure. I mean, I don't know exactly because thankfully I've never been in that sort of situation. But I know also from having been to the US with a friend, through Homeland Security, all the questioning you get just to go into the USA, and that's before the last half a year. The last 6 months, everything's got a whole part worse. The stories of people who are being, detained because of irregularities on their passport or something, or um, it's just mind-bogglingly scary, and it puts you off traveling. It puts you off a lot of things, I think. um, so um, the what ifs. That's one of the factors. I think this is a compelling film to watch for anyone, regardless of whether you work in a large organization, like I said, or if you're just an ordinary person just interested in how it is to work in an organization that might have rules like this. Um, and um, well, they have a lot of power, the people in charge who are searching your place. Um, they need to find out whether you've complied with the law or not, and if they find any evidence that you haven't, woe betide you. And um, you know, if you made a mistake in the training of handling information, um, it's really um, just scary. Um, so now, I think the you know I feel. I mean, there are a lot of things I've thought about since as well, given the way things are going currently, as in people are I think the early days of the current administration in the US seem to be seizing information of employees, government employees in the US, and just because they were civil servants, and it's almost like the data there, their data, their payroll stuff was not protected, and people were accused of being DEI hires and all that sort of stuff. And then I've thought also about the ice swoops that are happening in the US. Someone writes an op-ed in a magazine, and then suddenly they're seized off the street, and their friends can't find them for hours or maybe a day or two, and then they're found 1,500 miles away. And it's like, um, the people doing, from what I gather, having seen some of these swoops on people, anyone could almost do it. People could just, with no identification, masked up men could just jump out of the van and kidnap anyone off the streets. That's what is really chilling about the way the world is right now. And so, um, uh, I don't know. I'm almost speechless how much things have changed in a little over 2 years since I saw this film, June 2023. It was one of the last films I saw in Odeon, Lux in Holloway. I've moved back to watching films in Wood Green Cineworld after that, but, I really liked that. But, um another aspect I thought about is campaign groups. There's some who've been prescribed recently, the people who are deemed, they were perhaps ordinary protesters a few weeks ago. Now they've been arrested because their organization is considered terrorists. The environmentalists who were sentenced up to 5 years in prison for the protest on a bridge, on the QE2 bridge, Purfleet to Darford, crossing over the Thames. They climbed up gantries and some of the protests, and they got hefty sentences for that because of the disruption they caused to a lot of traffic. But it means that environmental protesters are possibly at risk. And I've seen films like The East and How to Blow Up a Pipeline. And I've also, I'm aware of miscarriages of justice. So, and also thinking about how Pride was banned in Hungary, and yet loads of people bravely turned up in the street, hundreds of thousands filled Budapest. Um, and they were going to be at risk of fines, but they were defiant. That shows a huge amount of courage. Um, there's a certain point where people will refuse to be law-abiding citizens because their freedom is actually at risk, and there's a feeling that they're going into um, an authoritarian state. So there's a lot that's redacted in this film. I mean, there's documents, and then there's bits that are scratched out, bleeped out, or not bleeped out. There's great sound effects added to the tension. I thought that was brilliant. And reality is such a good name for the character, but also the film. And it's just like, here we are, reality. So I'm going to score this 8.75. It was a really, really good film to watch. I'd love to know what you think about it. Please like if you like this review. Um, hit the like, and thanks if you subscribe. hit the notification button. Hope to see you again soon. Bye for now.